Hello, we are starting our first of 100 horror movie poster with the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. And I have destroyed that name from everything from Dr. Calgary to Calamari to Caligari. So do not expect me to pronounce that the right way throughout the rest of this, just because Caligari is, or that's not even the right name, Calgary is not a natural word that I say. I have even referred to him as Dr. Octopus a couple of times, just going along with the calamari thing. Because it makes me happy. This is an interesting film for a lot of reasons. This is a 1920 German film. There is a lot of controversy over whether this is a good movie, a bad movie, if it's a foreign invasion film. So let me start off by saying it definitely has an interesting plot right off the bat. The storyline is about a gentleman named Francis who is telling a story of an insane hypnotist who is using a somnambulist, according to YouTube, on how to pronounce it. Which is a shame that I had to look that up. But a somnambulist is essentially a like narcoleptic person. It's a sleep disorder. I think they say that the somnambulist, whose name is Caesar in this, has been asleep for like 25 years or something like that, and that's why he's an oddity, because we find out that Dr. Caligari, I think I did it right that time, is using him to commit murder, which right off the bat makes almost no sense, because how does a sleeping person kill anything other than time? There's a device in this movie called a frame story, which is a story inside of a story. That device was forced onto the writers against their will. They didn't want to tell the story in this way, but the producers said in order to have the film start in a normal-ish setting, to ease the audience into the rest of the film, they needed to do it this way. People have argued for over the last 100 years on what is the meaning behind this movie. Some people say it has to do with the German people's feeling towards having a leader. Some said it had to do with German government. And nothing that as far as I can tell, has been officially stated by the writers, other than that it was a collaboration between these two gentlemen's experiences through World War I and how they felt about certain things, most of which them being pacifists. So everything else is just kind of guesses or people's own biases, I think, being a part of why they think a movie means something. People even argue that it was the first true horror film, and I don't even know what that's supposed to mean. Like, what's a film that's not a true horror film that would have come before it, where somebody goes, oh, this is the first one, except for that other one that we ignore, or that doesn't count, or it kind of just doesn't make any sense, at least to me, on the phrasing of that. It's not like they're saying this is the first monster movie, or this is the first race car movie. I don't know why I said race car. That's a terrible example, but I'm pretty sure I'm leaving it in the final cut of this review. Even the set itself on this movie, people like to argue about, because a lot of it is just painted on like cardboard background. So, and the angles are real sharp and dark, and it looks real shadowy, much like this right here. You can tell in this picture, it looks very unsettling. And that was actually done on purpose. They wanted the look to be more chaotic and not natural so that you didn't feel comfortable looking at this. The reviews and reception of this film are all over the place, and I can absolutely see why. Without any further ado, let's get into the plot crunch of this movie. And this is the opening scene, which is the frame story of the story inside the story that is supposed to seem more normal to make the transition to the rest of the film make more sense. I'll have you be the judge of that in just a second here. So the movie opens up with two men sitting on a bench. One is a gentleman named Francis, who we will learn more about his story when we go into the flashback. And the other is an old man that tells Francis that spirits have driven him away from his family and his home. We then see a woman named Jane wander past them, and Francis explains that that's his fiance, and they too have been through quite an ordeal. And I'm just imagining the scenario where you open up to somebody, and maybe a stranger, maybe somebody you know, and say, man, some things have gone wrong, and I'm not talking to my wife, I can't go back to my home. And they reply with, well, I've been through some stuff too. Like, not a sympathetic ear at all from Francis. And of course, Jane wandering around, not really looking too coherent. This is what they thought the normal setting to prepare us for what happens next was. Now we go to the flashback. I am pretty positive I'm not going to be able to find the effect on this program to make that look good. So I apologize that that looks terrible. And even more so that I keep doing it. Stop. So we flash back and we see Francis and his friend Alan, who are good intentionally. They're not being malicious towards each other, but they are competing for Jane's love. They do want her attention, and they want to be with her. They even make a sense that, like, hey, whichever one she picks, we're still friends. It's not that big of a deal. So I don't know how hard they were really competing if it didn't matter who won. After she goes home for the night, they decide to go to the town fair the following day. Is it just me, or has anybody watching this ever been competing for somebody's affection with somebody else, and then you plan a date with the other person the following day to go to the fair? I feel like wooing somebody you're interested in has changed very much from 1920 to 2020. But then again, to be fair, there's not a whole lot of wooing going on right now, being that we can't go anywhere. Hopefully we can be socializing more soon. Now we jump cut to the town hall, I guess it is, where you would get permits for things. And this is where we are introduced to Dr. Octopus, who is trying to get a permit for the town fair so that he can show off his Sleeping Beauty. His somnambulist? No, I'm gonna refer back to YouTube. His somnambulist is a gentleman named Caesar. The clerk that is giving out the permits makes fun of the doctor and mocks him and berates him and belittles him and a bunch of other bad words. Really puts him down, but does eventually give him the permit to show off his attraction. And that night, the clerk is found dead. So be nice to crazy doctors that sound like octopus. That is the moral of the lesson here. Now we jump to the day of the fair, where Francis and Alan end up at the show of Dr. Caligari? No, Caligari. Man, I really hope the next movie is like The Cabinet of Dr. Smith, something that is going to be easy to pronounce. Let's see what we got here. The Phantom Carriage. I know I can pronounce that. So I apologize. Please forgive me for the pronunciation of all of the names in this review here. But we are at the spectacular. We're at the show with Francis and Alan, and the doctor shows off his sleeping oddity by waking him up and having him answer questions. I don't know what the like the in-depth meaning of somnambulance, but if somebody told me that they had a sleeping disorder, or somebody has been asleep for forever, and I will prove it to you by waking him up and you talking to him, I feel like that alone completely eliminates the thing you were trying to sell me on. But there are a bunch of people in the crowd that are looking for it. But when the doctor wakes up Caesar, he looks terrifying, kind of like this. And that is the face of Caesar. That is the face of the sleeping man who will answer all of your questions. This is where Alan steps up, and despite Francis's urging him not to say anything, Alan asks Caesar how long he will live. And Caesar replies with, "You'll be dead by dawn." I don't really know what the best answer to that would be. I mean, I'm assuming a date very far away from when you asked, as opposed to within the next 24 hours. Later on that night, a dark figure breaks into Alan's house and kills him. Francis gets Jane and her father, Dr. Olson, to investigate the murder. And of course, their first thought would be probably the guy that said, "You'll be dead by dawn." The doctor gets police authority to investigate Caesar. Because why wouldn't you go to the first person who said, "You'll be dead in 24 hours, to ask them about it? However, later on that night, the police catch a man with a knife trying to kill an elderly woman. He confesses that he was going to kill her, but that he had nothing to do with the previous murders. He was just trying to take advantage of what was going on to pass the blame to the real murderer so that he would hopefully get away with it. Kind of a smart move, but I do not condone blaming your murders on other people. If you're going to kill somebody, take responsibility for it like a responsible person. I think legally I might have to cut that out of the thing. That night, Francis spies on the doctor and Caesar and observes what appears to be Caesar sleeping in his box. However, what he doesn't know is that the real Caesar has snuck out and is on his way to Jane's house. However, after a struggle, instead of killing her, he drags her through the window to the street. He is chased by an angry mob. Caesar eventually drops Jane and runs away. While running away, Caesar drops dead. In all of this confusion, Francis gets word that they caught the attacker, but knowing that it couldn't have been him because he's watching Caesar in the box, goes to examine Caesar and finds out that it's just a dummy. It's not the real Caesar. In all of the confusion, the doctor escapes from Francis and the police, but Francis sees him run inside of a local insane asylum. Because, they have those everywhere. Francis runs into the insane asylum as well, and upon further investigation, finds out that Caligari is actually the asylum's director. With the help of the asylum staff, Francis goes through the records of the doctor to find out that he is obsessed with the story of an 11th century monk named Caligari, who used a sleepwalker named Caesar to commit murders in Italian towns. The director of the insane asylum, who has been playing the part of Dr. Caligari, experiments with a somnambulist. Man, I hate that word. Who had been committed to the insane asylum to try to live out this fantasy. When he finds out what's going on, he declares to everybody that he must become Caligari and tries to escape. He attacks one of the staff at the insane asylum, but they subdue him. They put him into a straitjacket. They show him that his Caesar, who wasn't the real Caesar, had passed away, and he loses his mind and becomes insane as well, and now is a member or is an inmate of his own asylum. Now the narrative jumps back to the frame story, the story inside, where we are back in the opening scene area, and Francis ends his story with the old man in a twist ending, where Francis is depicted as an inmate at the insane asylum. Jane and Caesar are both patients there as well. Very, very much like Wizard of Oz. And you were there, and you were there, and you were there. Caesar is not a somnambulist, but he is awake, quiet, and visibly not dangerous. Like he is not a murderer at all. The man Francis refers to as the doctor is the asylum director, but Francis attacks him and is restrained in a straitjacket and then placed in the same cell where Caligari was put in his hallucination of everything that had happened. And the director of the asylum announces that he understands what's going on and that he'll be able to cure him now. And that's how we wrap, that's how we end it. With all of that being said, it is very clear why it is, why the reception of it is very torn. I think the idea is really cool, but the way that it was told and the things that were done, and I also believe that back in the time there was an issue with a German film coming to America after World War One, that people had an issue accepting anything foreign. So with everything that I had observed in this film and the watching, I understand completely why there was such a divide in why some people liked it and some people didn't. Overall, I don't know if I'm a fan. I understand why it's gotten a cult following, or it's become a cult classic. I don't know if I would go back and rewatch this one, but I'm glad that I did to see it for what it was. From what I've read, it was a big influence in German films after this. But I don't know if this is one that I would recommend for any other reason other than just saying that you checked it off your box. So we are now to my favorite part, and I'm really curious with what is going to be behind that picture. You guys ready to check it out? Let's go. All right, so let's start the scratching. Well, it looks like we got Caesar behind here. Maybe this is Caesar and Jane. So here we have Caesar and Jane behind the scratching of this. Our next film is going to be the 1921 Phantom Carriage. So if you guys want to see that, you have a week to check it out before I do my review on next Thursday. So I hope you guys are enjoying this. If you want to see the next film off the 100 Essentials movie poster, that will be Tuesday. And on the Patreon, we will be doing them on Monday as well. We have the first one up there for free. You guys can check it out without being a patron or having a subscription. And big shout out, big thank you very much to my Patreon members whose names are about to pop up right now. It means a whole lot that you guys have my back. I hope everybody's having a great new year. We're 1 week into it already. It's definitely interesting to say the least. But I will catch you guys next Thursday. Later days.